Thank you so much to Clayton McDowell and to all of the participants in our last session. That was a really fantastic conversation. Before the next session, we'd like to remind you that you'll be able to view recordings of all of today's sessions on our YouTube channel in the coming weeks. You can subscribe to our channel at youtube.com/renewaustralia to be notified when your recordings are up. Next, we have a session on lowering your energy bills, emceed by Jenny Edwards, the Director of Lighthouse Architecture and Science. Jenny, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rob. I'm Jenny Edwards, and today I'm talking to you from the land of the Ngunnawal people in Canberra. I'm a passionate advocate for sustainable housing, and my business, Lighthouse Architecture and Science, is all about just that. In fact, we're a sponsor of Sustainable House Day. I'm a scientist, not an architect, but I have several talented architects on my team. And I totally agree, Rob. I just want to say I love that previous session. It was really terrific. We've got big shoes to fill, everyone on my panel. I'm all for accessibility, and something that a lot of people probably don't know about me is that I've had 3 hip replacements. As a middle-aged person, I actually had my first one in my 20s. So ageing in place, design for accessibility is such a critical, and as the guest said, it's a no-brainer. Everyone should be thinking about it. But back to our session. 3/4 of our work as Lighthouse is about renovation and retrofit. And I love nothing more than helping people work out how to best spend their limited budgets to achieve the greatest thermal or energy efficiency bang for buck. So I'm really excited about today's session, where our 4 generous guests are going to share their experiences about maximising the energy efficiency and lowering the energy bills at their own homes, or in the case of our first guest, at their highly productive urban farm. The format for this session, like all of those earlier today, is that each guest will give us a short intro to their project. Hopefully you've had a chance to check out the info and the videos online. If not, be sure to do that afterwards because they are packed with additional info. So now we're going to hear a short 2-minute intro from each of them, and then we'll dive into the Q&A. So just click on the Q&A icon down the bottom and type in your questions, and we'll do our best to get through all of them. But first of all, let me introduce you to John Hay. John is an electrician with a science degree in horticulture, and he's going to give us a short intro about his terrific solar-powered urban farm in Darra, Queensland. Darra is a Brisbane suburb, about 25 minutes drive southwest of the city. And John's project is a fabulous example of sustainable horticulture. So over to you, John.
Yeah, g'day. Cheers, Jenny. Thanks for the intro there. Just a little bit of background about myself. Jenny mentioned it quickly, but I have a science degree in horticulture. I'm a qualified electrician, and I work for the Queensland Farmers Federation on energy efficiency projects, carbon sequestration and land restoration, and digital IoT projects. With that, we also dive into energy microgrids and I guess future energy sources. And it's a bit of a hot topic at the moment with net zero fast approaching. And I guess how do we utilise energy more efficiently? Besides that, I run my urban farm at home. I have a 10.4 kilowatt battery system, some digital IoT sensors that monitor some environmental parameters, also a 6.2 kilowatt solar system. So this enables me to, I guess, run my pond and that sort of stuff relatively cheaply. So basically, I do have some switching stuff on site as well. So I can monitor my solar, switch on pumps, switch on, I guess, heating apparatus or cooling apparatus, depending on what I'm generating on site. The idea is to expand it a little bit further and then start looking at soil moisture and some of those climate variables and switching on irrigation pumps as I need to when I'm generating excess solar. So that's a little bit of background about my farm there. It's packed into 730 square metres. I've got chickens, fish, bees. I grow organically, conventionally, under lights. I run a small nursery. So it keeps me pretty busy. Cheers.
Amazing. Thanks, John. Look, it really is an incredible setup. And those of you who are on Instagram, I encourage you to find John on Instagram, because it is amazing what comes out of that small chunk of land, really spectacular. Next, I'd like to say hi to Chris Jones. I know Chris has had a quick trip up the hill to his house. He, interestingly, grew up off-grid in southern Queensland and he's had a long interest in self-sufficiency. He's going to tell us about the house and magnificent shed. I think he might even be in the shed, where he lives with his partner Kat in Gooseberry Hill. Gooseberry Hill is a suburb in the hills 25 minutes to the east of Perth. And Chris has come straight from giving a presentation about electrified transport at the Perth Sustainable House Day event in Subiaco. So I hope you've had a quick cuppa or refreshing glass of water, Chris. But tell us a bit more.
Sure. In fact, I haven't even left Subiaco yet. I have. I've just gone into a storeroom behind. In fact, there's a panel directly behind that wall answering questions about sustainable homes here in Perth. So yes, hopefully you all got a chance to check out my video. Got a doctorate in plant science, but I've always been interested in energy efficiency and self-sufficiency, I suppose. And it became clear that transport was really the main problem with reducing the energy inputs in my lifestyle. And so when electric vehicles became a viable option, recharging them from solar energy, I felt like we really had an option to clean things up. Yes, I live in Kalamunda, which is to the east of Perth in the hills. I work as a TAFE lecturer. Unfortunately, my round trip commute is close to about 90 kilometres. So I'm glad I've got the electric vehicle to make that a little bit lower impact. I've long felt that low impact living should also be low cost living. So a lot of the things that I've done on this humble 40-year-old home are just sort of the big ticket items that save me the most money over the long term, and everything else is kind of as I get around to it.
Yeah, good stuff. Look forward to hearing more. Next, we have Brian Mollan, who actually only lives about 5 minutes away from Chris. He's also in Kalamunda in the Perth Hills. And I'm pretty sure Brian is our oldest presenter at Sustainable House Day 2021. But he assures me he still has the heart and mind of a 25-year-old, and I don't doubt it, despite having 3 grandchildren. He also bartered his first big water tank plus pump for a carton of beer. He's a former helicopter pilot, real estate agent and volunteer firefighter, so he brings some really interesting perspectives. Hello, Brian.
Hello, thank you very much, and good day. My journey, I suppose, started about 13 years ago, so it's been long, and it's still in progress. And I suppose it's like a Lego job, adding bits at a time. The structure of the house is 50-year-old and 51-year-old now, and my journey started with 8 panels and grew from there to what it is today. Over to you.
Excellent. No, I loved your staged approach, and we might talk about that a little bit more later. Finally, we have Julie Mullenhauser, who also owns a 1970s home. What a great decade the 70s were for sensible sized and solid homes. Unfortunately, our geographic connections end at this point because Julie actually lives in Canterbury, Victoria. But like John, Chris and Brian, she also lives 25 minutes away from her capital city, which of course is Melbourne. Julie has got is a medical professional, but she's also done study toward a master's in landscape architecture. So she has become a passionate advocate for quality house design and retrofit after living in a wonderful, timeless, architecturally designed 1970s home for many years. Welcome, Julie.
Oh, thanks for that lovely introduction, Jenny. So I really don't have any professional qualifications for retrofitting, renovation or energy efficiency. It's really just an interest and the benefit of doing quite a few renovations now over the years and lessons learned, but also the message that it's a really worthwhile exercise, not just for the benefits of saving energy and the environmental sustainability, but really comfort, both thermal and acoustic, and also to share some insights about the benefits of great design, the process that people might go about, and to give people confidence for that. I think that's what I would bring to the discussion.
Brilliant. Look, I think although none of you may have qualifications in retrofit, I think your experience is worth so much. So I look forward to digging into that. So we'll start collecting questions. They're always a little bit slow to start. So I'll get things rolling. So John, I want to start with you. I guess you're a little bit of the odd one out in this gang. But I'm really interested that, as a qualified electrician and having that Bachelor of Science majoring in horticulture, you really are the perfect person to help other farmers improve their energy efficiency. So I was really interested to learn about that work with the Queensland Farmers Federation, which I knew nothing about. And I'm keen to know, is there strong interest and uptake in that program?
Definitely. We have 180 farmers on board from the last iteration of the Energy Savers project. This is the 4th iteration. So the last couple were a little bit lighter in participants, but energy is a massive issue for farms, especially for irrigation, heating, cooling systems. So yes, there is an interest there, and we look across all industry, and agriculture has a large part to play in meeting net zero, as we all know, and that can be through soil as well, and I guess improving infrastructure on site. So a lot of farms, I guess they're older, they've been around for a while. There's a lot of infrastructure there that is quite old. So we have to go through and have a look at those pieces of equipment, and look at what can we possibly replace it with. And interestingly, it's not just energy that's a part of that. There's also energy water nexus. So irrigation design, moving water, it involves a lot of energy. So yeah, it's an interesting project. And we also look at the production side of things as well. So can we use that water more efficiently, using less energy, at the same time improving practices on farm to lift production?
It's brilliant. Look, my principal architect at Lighthouse, although she lives here in Canberra at the moment, is a country girl, and she's going to move back to her parents' farm in the Upper Murray, and she's particularly interested in these issues. So we'll certainly be hooking her up with you and the work you're doing. It's really great. Thanks.
Cheers.
Chris, I hope you have had a glass of water, Chris. Someone gave you a drink. I love your pragmatic approach to your home and the whole site. And it was a nice surprise in the video to discover what was going on in your magnificent shed. So perhaps you'd like to tell us more about that and how much interest is actually growing in converting vehicles to electric.
Yeah, so we moved into our place in Kalamunda a little over 3 years ago, and a friend had asked me to convert her 1988 Honda Prelude to electric. And having just moved into this place, it was the first time buyers, we're in our 40s, first time buyers, that's just the way things are. So the first thing I did was install a hoist so that I could lift the car up and work on it. And it's just been magnificent. I built an electric superbike and raced it. I didn't race it. I put a fast guy on it. He raced it for me in the FX Superbike series. And it's still to this day the fastest electric vehicle in Australia. It's really cool. So I guess we've been with the Electric Vehicle Association involved in conversions for a long time. But now that you can go out and buy them, we help people with those queries as well. We certainly never discourage people from converting cars. Just be aware of the costs and the challenges ahead. Brilliant.
Look, I know Brian is also has an electric car and electric bike. Do you guys actually know each other? So you live so close to it? Yeah, you do. I was going to say, you would have to. Cool. So, Brian, I was, oh, sorry, let me control my notes here. I think you, Brian, have stumbled across the secret to eternal youth, and clearly retrofitting your home and constantly reducing your footprint is, it's clearly been very good for your health. And I guess in all seriousness, it must give you a sense of purpose. And do your grandchildren inspire you to continue with this process of improving your home?
I do it for them, Jenny. I can't say they inspire me because they think I'm a silly old, I was going to say another word, but a silly old man. Yeah, I guess I carry on a bit about it to them, but they don't really seem to get the message.
I'm sure it's sinking in.
I suppose I'm trying to do it by example.
Yeah.
That's the theory.
Absolutely.
And talking about Chris, by the way, yeah, indeed, we are good friends, and he will be shortly undertaking a battery upgrade on my electric car. So yeah, we're pretty close. So he's a great guy. Excellent.
And look, I think that leading by example thing is, again, you can't underestimate how much impact it has, because while the grandkids might not seem that impressed, you're normalising it for them so that they will grow to expect that when they buy a home, that they will have these things or do these things. So good on you. That's great. And, Julie, our first question has come in from someone who also lives in inner city Melbourne in a mid-century townhouse, but they're finding the cost of replacing windows with double glazing daunting. Now, would you have any clues or suggestions?
Well, as you know, it's doing anything to windows is just not cheap. So because of the era of our home, we have a lot of windows. So addressing that was in fact important. We looked at, we got costing for retrofitting single E-glass for double glazed units being retrofitted, and the outcome, at least for us, because our window frames were in poor condition, the sashes, the profile for them is not very deep, you're getting multiplied many times over. It gets quite expensive. So a discussion with the builder, in fact, for us, it was replacement, which allowed us to, in some cases, reduce the window area that we had, fit proper seals and hardware. But we had some unexpected hiccups, like finding out that a very significant beam was in fact held up by a window. So exactly. So I would say it is expensive. Depending on your climate and your home, it is actually worthwhile probably getting either a NATAS or an energy assessment just to see how much benefit you get from it, because it may or may not be as much as you think. So it's not cheap.
Yeah, look, following up on that, it does vary across the country, and there's a lot more competition in some parts of the market. Here in Canberra, we've got a lot more competition because we get so much colder. But also another point you were sort of hinting at there, Julie, is that windows are expensive. So I always stress to people, don't think that windows is where you should start. There's other stuff like draft sealing, upgrading your insulation, which will give you bigger bang for buck, and they should be your priority.
Yeah. I just would chip in along those lines, but just having a plan is really, really important, because while your budget may not stretch to doing everything now, what is very, very frustrating is to do something only to find A, it wasn't the most important, or B, you need to actually go backwards if you want to do something else. You kind of want to think about at the outset the whole it in total, and maybe you don't tackle it all, but at least there's some kind of plan and logic.
Yeah, no, great advice. That holistic view and making sure you do things in the right order, so you're not painfully undoing things and seeing that money wasted. No, really good stuff. You also hinted at getting an energy assessment done, which fits with that question that's come through. Someone has asked, have any of the panelists had the benefit of any energy modelling consultants for their design or their houses, to improve the energy efficiency and any recommendations or questions to ask. What do you need to assess first? Do you get an audit done? So Chris and Brian, I guess up in the hills, have you tapped into services like that?
I personally haven't, but I'm a big energy nerd, so I did everything I could to sort of find out this information myself. You can get a lot of progress just out of your own electricity meter. If you look at how much energy you're using over the course of a week, if you can get 2 meter readings a day before you head out to work and one when you come home, you can get some indication of when and how you're using energy, and you can do quite a lot with that. When it comes to finding drafts and heat loss and that kind of stuff, yeah, that's a lot harder, and it's probably worth bringing in a consultant if you want. But your body's a pretty good judge of whether something's cold and drafty or needs work or not. Look, by all means, insulate your ceiling, but if you're not sealing the gap under the doors, you could be wasting your time. So yeah, I think certainly for certain applications, heat especially, it's worth getting a professional in.
Yeah, good stuff.
Do you mind if I add something there, Jenny?
Yeah, no, go for it, John.
With our program, we use energy auditors. So there's the Australian standard 3598 for energy audits. So there's different types of energy audits. There's type 1, 2 and 3. So you can start at a basic energy audit, like what Chris said, looking at energy meters and seeing what you can adjust there. Then you can start going into your subsystems and sub-circuits, a little bit more complex, and the cost is obviously a bit higher. So they could, like a qualified energy auditor, they will point out some pretty significant issues on site. They can look at, I guess, heat loss, cooling loss on apparatus. So they do a thorough job, but it does cost some money. So
yeah, no, look, knowledge is power. In this case, knowledge is going to save you a lot of power. It is well and truly worth, I think, tapping into some expertise. And Brian, you strike me as the kind of guy who also has monitored your consumption pretty well and looked at the data as you've done the staged process.
Yes, I have a Selectronic system for the inverter, and that gives me massive data in terms of energy use. Just going back to heating, very old-fashioned, but it works for us, and that is heavy lined curtains with pelmets are the substitute for double glazing. Yes, that's another program, is double glazing. But in the meantime, that's what keeps us warm in the winter and keeps the heat in.
Really good point. I'm often saying to people who are wanting to retrofit, and again, everyone gets attracted by double glazing because it's sort of the new sexy thing, but window dressings, those internal curtains and pelmet, even if it's a piece of fabric or a piece of cardboard at the top to stop that draft circulating, and the external shading devices, and that can be a piece of cardboard or a bit of shade cloth hanging off the gutters. Those things can help your window performance or stop your windows being the weak point in your building envelope, particularly in a climate like that of Perth, which I know does get cold and grey over winter, but I grew up in Perth, but I now live in Canberra, and I don't think it's cold in Perth anymore. So yeah, windows, I just highlight again, everyone, don't think double glazing is your priority. There are other things to do first.
I think the other thing to put into context about double glazing is that to totally double glaze our home would cost about a bit over $20,000, which I'm not opposed to spending over the course of the next 5 years. But the irony is that I could just install another solar system and install another air conditioner, and that would still be cheaper. Like, that's right. That's a bit sad. Yeah. But
so you won't get the financial payback. You'll get the improvement in comfort and health with that one. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Brian, you wanted to add something?
Yes, sorry, Jenny. Yes,
yeah.
I had identified 2 heat loss windows in my house, which were the highest point of the house, and I knew I was losing heat through those 2, and I got magnetite installed. It's a polycarbonate, but that also has stopped heat loss.
Yeah, good stuff.
It's a double glazing with polycarbonate.
Yeah, excellent.
So
Go, Julie.
just one other point to add about the monitoring is I think it's really important as a behavioural feedback tool, so that we're lucky enough our inverter allows us to have real-time access to our consumption and generation data. But here in Victoria, we will have smart meters, and it's possible just to register that with your network provider, and that gives a similar kind of access on what the grid sees, at least, just so that you get that feedback to help adjust behaviours and you don't get that grid shock, that bill shock rather.
Yeah, very powerful. People, yeah, often just don't realise what activities are using up the most power. So that, yeah, great advice, and smart meters are fantastically powerful in that way.
It's on the smart meters, Jenny, please. Just with smart meters, there's a few switchable devices coming out now. So basically, you can wire your circuit boards, look at your consumption on your dashboards, and then select being able to turn things on and off at a given period of time. So if you can see you're generating excess solar, then you might be able to go, well, turn on, whatever it is you want to turn on in the house, the stove, get some heat into that stove during the day if you want to heat that stove up, or turn it off if you're importing too much from the grid. And there's some great stuff on those devices where they show energy use breakdown. So on the dashboard, you can see an energy use breakdown straight away, and see where you are using your power during the day.
Fantastic. No, great advice. Not surprisingly, we've got a couple of solar and battery questions, or one in particular. This person is asking, how realistic are home batteries for storing excess solar, as it seems power companies are leaning towards charging for sending excess power to the grid? Who wants to, probably a few of you want to have a go at that one.
I'll throw in a few cents on batteries. Yeah, great. Look, yeah, it's probably not going to impress the battery salesman at the moment, but in terms of grid connections, sometimes they're not that feasible. They can be feasible on swirl lines, and where you have energy that's not that reliable, to help boost your systems at home. If you want to tinker around with batteries, they are getting cheaper. And I guess if you have some excess solar there that you want to store and offset some of that consumption at night, then go for it. But me personally, it was more of an interest putting batteries in as an early adopter. As I install more batteries, the cost is going to come down, and it might become more feasible. But I suggest doing your research, seeing if it's feasible in your situation. It's not going to be feasible in all situations.
That's right. Brian, tell us about your batteries.
I've got some experience with batteries. Initially, I had a friend in trucking. Trucks use 24-volt system, two 12-volt batteries. When their system goes down, they ditch both batteries. Usually one of those batteries still has life in it. So being generous, I offered to house that battery that still had some life in it. So I had a bank of 8 of these big, heavy truck batteries. And that worked for lead acid batteries. And that worked for about 18 months until eventually they gave up, because they're not designed for that sort of task. But they cost me nothing. And when I went to recycle them, I got some money for them. So that wasn't bad.
Great experiment.
I then went to stage 2, which was flooded or gel cell lead acids, brand new. And they worked for about 18 months, but eventually just couldn't do the job anymore. Until eventually I struck it very lucky and obtained a 22 kilowatt hour worth of lithium ion batteries, and they have been fantastic, really good. Are they worth it for me? Absolutely, because my solar goes into them, runs the house and charges cars and does everything else for the majority of the time. If we get 3 days of cloud in Western Australia and rain, then I have to import from the grid, but that's a rare occasion. But yes, price is obviously a consideration, and that's a factor. In another panel, a gentleman there was saying, don't bother with batteries, use your electric car.
Yeah, that's yep, that comes up more and more these days.
That would have been my contribution, actually, is when people have got solar and they're wondering whether they should get a battery, I normally ask, why don't you buy an EV? That way you can drive your battery around. Now, the question is, can you use that battery to power your home? Yes, you can, but it is expensive and complicated and probably not worth it. My car takes more than it could ever give. So I get more value, more intrinsic value out of a car with a full battery by driving it places than I do by running my home, saving negligible cents per night. So I think if you can, and you're you need a new vehicle, please consider getting an EV. I understand they are expensive, but I mean, you know, my wife and I bought an Ioniq, which will be our last car, or we'll drive it into the ground. You know, drive the wheels off it. That's where you get the value.
Yeah, no, good advice. Julie, do you have, I know you've got a PV system. Do you have batteries?
No, we don't. Look, we kind of, the position that I'm at is really trying to maximise self-consumption. So we have a heat pump hot water system, and a lot of our regular appliances like the washing machine and the dishwasher, all those things, we just time the use for the middle of the day. So we're at about 40% self-consumption. And I think just based on where things are going, that's probably a good point for us. At some point in the future, we did make provision to have electric car charging, but we're kind of not at that in terms of our cars at the moment.
Yeah. No.
Just Jenny, building on what Julie's saying with batteries, she makes a good point in terms of being efficient and lowering your demand to start with. Really lower your energy consumption to begin with, so then that feasibility may pay itself off, those batteries. But moving into the future, I guess demand optimization from energy meters is probably going to be a big thing. So having that automatic switching available and learning rules, I guess, as you know, as they make those switches, you know, artificial intelligence and deep learning from your data can then begin to optimize your energy consumption on site.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, I've just scrolled down on the questions page. I had missed this. There's a whole other page of questions. Looks like we could do probably an entire session on solar, no surprise, and also on windows. I'm just checking. I think we've covered off on most of those window questions.
On the subject of what's the most expensive part of my existence, I suppose, and I'd have to say it's the mortgage. You know, what do I spend? Even if I didn't have solar and a battery, electricity is not the most expensive thing in my life. Water is not particularly expensive either, although I've got a rainwater tank. It's good fun. But you know, it's the other costs of living that really start to add up. And I mean, if you're unfortunate enough to have chronic health problems, that's probably where most of your money is going to go. So do what you can to sort of maintain your health, so that you don't have to spend money on other stuff. I guess there's lots of places where we spend money and don't think twice about it.
Totally, a really important point. You know, your home is the place where you spend most of your time with the people you love. Why wouldn't you invest some money in improving its, you know, your comfort and have that positive impact on your mental and physical health? It just makes sense. But I'm preaching to the converted here. Let me just scroll up and see if I can. I think this is quite a specific question, but bear with me as I read it out. If I have solar on and only 2 people in the house for 48 weeks of the year, I'm looking at the benefit of instant hot water system versus heat pump hot water. Is it a waste heating a 300 litre tank for 2 people versus, say, a 100 litre instant hot water system? I know this is one that comes up over on My Efficient Electric Home, the Facebook group, a lot. Anyone want to say anything about that?
Oh, well, I can probably speak to just the fact that if you go all electric, so you're kind of looking not necessarily at the scenario where you've got a working appliance. You might be at the point where you're looking at replacing your appliance and what your options are. So yes, a heat pump hot water service is going to be more expensive than an instantaneous gas service. But you do have the benefit that you then are moving to an all-electric home and you're ditching your service to property charge for gas, and you have the potential where you are lowering your greenhouse gas emissions. That would be, so my advice would be just kind of planning for the future if that's the route that you want to go down.
Yeah, great advice. Anyone else on hot water systems in particular? Are you all electric? I know, Chris, you've still got gas for your cooking, but you only takes 18 months to use it. Is that right?
Yeah. So yes, I've got a heat pump hot water system, and that's great. It uses very little electricity, and that only comes on during the day while the sun shines. But we still have a gas cooktop. Have I replaced it with an induction cooktop? No, because they cost a lot of money. The gas, it costs us maybe $100 a year at the most to maintain that gas stove. Why would I change it?
Yeah. Although the portable ones from IKEA are apparently fantastic. So give that a whirl if anything does go wrong with the gas system.
I guess on gas, like what's going to happen in the hydrogen space? So is infrastructure going to change and allow us to utilise hydrogen on site? That's a real potential there. So, you know, we might be replacing some of our gas appliances with that fuel source.
Yeah.
I should just add, I have bottled gas, not scheme gas, because I think scheme gas would be quite expensive.
Yeah, cool. Someone in the audience, oh, sorry, Brian, hot water system.
Sorry.
Did you want to add?
Back to batteries. In Western Australia, we have a monopoly retailer called Synergy, government owned, and they are actually trialling community batteries. So in a suburb, they're putting in a big battery bank, and owners can hook up, feed their solar into it and take it back out again. How well that's going, I cannot tell. Whether it's happening in the eastern states, I don't know. But it is, I see, to have great potential for a community batteries. That's the first point. Second point, I pick up on Chris, who said electric cars are expensive. There are a lot of second-hand electric cars coming onto the market at a very good price. Their range may be limited, but they're perfect for running around town, kids to school and shopping.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people in Canberra are taking advantage of the second-hand electric cars coming in at the moment. There's been a few bulk buys, so yeah, good advice. Somebody in the audience is wanting to know if you can tell us how much your power bills have changed. Do you have that clear before and after, or staged data?
Zero.
Well, yeah, zero. That's right.
I mean,
so
it's completely changed.
Yeah, that's right.
To actually net.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm getting paid.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the case for all of you, I think?
No, I don't get paid for what I export to the grid. I think because with Western Power, the system's over 5 kilowatts, so I don't get paid anything. It's only just over 5 kilowatts though. Our electricity bills weren't that big to begin with, but since we've got the electric car, it's absolutely crucial that we charge that on solar as much as we can.
Yeah.
So I'd say our bills would have gone down from about maybe $2,000 a year to maybe $300 a year.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Good stuff. Can someone please explain, perhaps this is for you, John, the difference between an energy meter and a whole house energy meter?
I guess you might be trying to say, or the person's trying to say, maybe like your energy provider's meter. The whole house might be monitoring all circuits on your house.
Yeah.
So That's what I feel.
Yeah. So if you want that greater breakdown, there are a wide variety of tools available, aren't there, John? You can go to all sorts of levels.
The whole range of different meters available. There's some coming out with real-time costs. So basically what your cost is at any given point in time. I won't say who that is, but you can also potentially to be paid or pay for electricity in real time. So if you're generating a certain amount of power at one point, you might pull the trigger and say, I want to be paid for that. So there's a whole host of meters out there. Do your research on them and see what's the best fit for you.
Great, good advice. I just thought to comment, Brian, you raised the idea of the community batteries. I know here in Canberra, there's a few new developments where they're looking at including community battery setups. And I think there are a few trials happening around the East Coast as well. So yeah, I think it's a space we're going to see a lot of activity. Now for a change of topic, underfloor insulation. Anyone got anything to say about underfloor insulation at their particular home? I imagine Chris and Brian, you on a slab?
Sorry?
Oh.
I
don't have any. But we're house on slab, yeah.
Yep, yeah, you're on slab. You're a slab on ground too, Brian?
No.
No, okay.
I've got a large undercroft area, varying between a couple of metres in one spot down to maybe 1.5 metres. And I believe that provides a cushion of stable temperature air under the house, which comes through the floorboards. Underneath the house there, the temperature is warm in winter and cool in summer. It's brilliant. We extended and built a kitchen which has open undercroft, and there we were finding a lot of heat loss going through the floor, and I installed insulation under that, and that has again transformed that room to being much more livable.
Yeah, I was going to say, getting away without that underfloor insulation is probably something you can do more readily in Perth. Julie would know in the Victorian climate that underfloor insulation is really important. Are you a suspended timber floor, Julie?
No, so we're a slab on grade on a very flat block. So it wasn't really, we didn't actually retrofit slab edge insulation. It just wasn't really, it wasn't really feasible because we're a courtyard home. So we've got just masses of wall. It's kind of a compromise, but we did in fact carpet to try and balance the thermal mass that we already had. We actually carpeted some rooms that previously hadn't been carpeted because just that concept of mean gradient, temperature gradient, you actually feel cold if there's too much exposed thermal mass, at least in our climate.
Yeah, absolutely. I can vouch for that here in Canberra too. And we don't retrofit slab edge insulation to existing slabs on ground. It's very complicated when you get to termite protection and other things too. So again, there are plenty of other things that you can do that will give you bigger bang for buck when you've got a slab. Suspended timber floors, we would in a cooler climate like Canberra or Victoria or Tassie put in that underfloor insulation for sure.
Would it not also be a viable option to perhaps just do underfloor heating for the bathroom, because that's where it matters the most, and it also help keep the room a bit drier?
Excellent. So you did the under tile heating? Oh,
yeah, just on the bathroom floor. I mean, given that the bathroom is a wet area and it's the coldest area where you step out of the shower and you go, ooh, that's cold.
Yeah,
it might not. Don't do the whole house, just the bathroom.
Yeah, I just wanted to differentiate for people that you don't mean in slab heating, which of course chews through massive amounts of power when resistive heating laid in the slab. But when you sit it on top of the tiles, insulation under the tiles, on top of the slab insulation, then the heating, so it's just coming up through the tiles is, we often do that in houses here in Canberra too. Yeah, it can work really nicely. Someone is saying, can a home become totally self-sustainable with net zero cost living, just like the talk on zero emissions? If so, how can this be achieved with the current systems of currency and regulation? Anyone have a go at that?
I'd say yes, you can be net zero at home. There's also other options if you might be a renter, for instance. So you might be able to buy carbon offsets at the moment. So there are a few options there for you to be net zero if you really wanted to be net zero. So yeah, and it's all about changing behaviours on site as well. So looking at what energy you're using, can you use less? How much solar is available? Shifting your practices during that window of opportunity. Regulations, I didn't quite understand what they were trying to say there. So
I'm not sure too, but we would encourage you, whoever who's asking that question, to ask around, do some more research, and certainly give it a crack. There are plenty of examples in Australia where people have. Absolutely. Sorry.
I'd say the best trick is the cheapest watt is the one you don't need.
Yep, the old negawatt instead of the megawatt. Yeah, the ones you don't use. Absolutely. And I harp on and on about draft sealing. Draft sealing and insulation, they're not at all sexy. You can't see them. They're boring, but they deliver such big bang for buck. And in all the climate zones that those two apply. I'm just wanting to check here. Someone had a more specific horticulture question. I'm just going back. Here we go. I am going to develop a 9-acre lifestyle block with a small number of livestock in southwest Victoria. It already has Indigenous plantations on the northwest and south. I'm going to build a simple passive solar home, but what else do I need to factor in for the entire property to make it the most efficient and have the most positive impact on bills and natural resources? Sounds like they need to contact you, John.
Yeah, I guess managing your pastures there, allowing your pastures to get up quite high. I'll just touch on this briefly, I guess. Solar pumping for water troughs. If distance is an issue, maybe you need a couple of sensors there to auto top up your troughs. In the home, I'm not sure if there's an existing home there or what it is, but I guess you install new efficient appliances and get some research behind you there. And yeah, so if you want to reach out, feel free. I can help you further with the pasture utilisation stuff there. So.
Excellent.
I might just jump in and say that where I grew up in east of Warwick in southern Queensland, we collected our own rainwater, we grew our own food, and we were very self-sufficient in that regard. But transport let us down. We tried making biodiesel for about, a year, and we saved about $3,000 in diesel, and then the diesel injectors clogged up and the engine failed, and so we spent $3,000 buying a new diesel engine. So I'm glad EVs came along. That's all I can say.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Julie, I'd like to divert back to you and again go off on a bit of a tangent. I know that you did some terrific research as part of your preparing for Solar House Day and your own project, and you found some results that suggested that homeowners' green renovation goals were heavily influenced by their images of home comfort, which classically showed those large open plan living areas with the big unshaded windows, regardless of the house orientation, and multiple bathrooms. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was quite interesting because I was thinking, look, what do I bring? What can I say? Because we keep saying it's air sealing, insulation, maybe looking at your windows, your appliances, and you kind of think, well, why doesn't this happen more often? And just looking at research about really understanding the process that people go through, because these are not insignificant financial decisions. And you really, the part of the process, apart from the goal setting, which this research showed that people, while they had an aspiration, they didn't have very clear goals. And that's really what you've got to have. And for most people, that also means getting expert input on how to reach those goals. And then the further steps of verification that actually the thing that you are doing does this thing that you hope it to do, and then finally the kind of behavioural feedbacks. And yeah, I found, because in essence, a home is a kind of an emotional or a psychological thing. So we tend to go with that, but you've really got to go with this very physical consideration of what you're doing, mindful that you're also trying to satisfy what is in fact, very fundamental psychological desires.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd encourage everyone out there, if you're going to look at a pretty magazine about houses, you look at Sanctuary. Don't look at all those other ones, and don't watch The Block.
No.
At all costs. No.
Better homes than yours.
Now, look, time is flying by. What a surprise. We've got less than 5 minutes left. So I'd like to give you all the opportunity to just finish with something that you think is really important that you might not have had an opportunity to say. So we'll go in the order of introduction. So, John, what do we need to know that you haven't had a chance to say?
Yeah, I guess with my project, it's all about integration. So energy efficiency and sequestering carbon and improving soil health, and all the little things that go with it, because we only have one planet. We've got to look after this one. So, and I guess the best way I do it is with energy metering as well. So yeah, looking after, doing my bit in all spaces.
That's great. And look, I just remembered too, someone wants to know what sort of fan you've got.
Yeah,
ceiling fan.
Ceiling fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a standard fan, that is. So yeah.
Yeah, we're all jealous that you're feeling warm enough to have your ceiling fan on. You can see I don't have mine on at the moment. Yeah, cool. Chris, what do we need to know?
I think don't be overwhelmed and don't feel like you need to do everything all at once. Just chip away at it. If this year you put the insulation in your ceiling, and then maybe next year you start to look at fixing the drafts, and the year after that you put solar on, just take it away at little bites. Every effort you put in is going to be worth it in the end.
Absolutely. I often see people suffering from analysis paralysis and fear of not achieving perfection or doing the absolutely, the right thing. So yeah, fully support that. Absolutely. Brian, what about you?
I take Julie's point in having a goal, and rather tritely, my goal is to achieve carbon tiptoes rather than a carbon footprint.
I like it.
In terms of energy, I believe I've got net zero now with my solar system and my batteries. And transport-wise, again, almost no emissions too. So I'm working on it.
Yeah, and with hindsight, given that you did the sort of 3 stages for your solar and the rainwater, we didn't talk about the rainwater stuff today, but would you go back and do it differently, do you think? Hindsight.
No, probably not, because each stage has been satisfaction in its own self.
Yep.
I increased my solar panels when the feed-in tariff came in. Australia went to effectively a 48-cent feed-in tariff. That brought forward my long-term planning to take advantage of that. And just interestingly, that was a 10-year scheme. When I bought my panels, the first lot of 5.5 kilowatts, it cost me $36,000, which today you can get for free. The government, Johnny Howard very kindly gave me 8,000, so that brought me down to 28,000. And over the 10 years, I have recorded the feed-in tariff I have received. And when that cut out 6 months ago, I totaled up my feed-in tariffs, and that came to the round figure of $28,000. So it's paid for itself in the time.
Excellent. That's great. Julie, you get the last words.
So my message would be that we possibly don't realise how uncomfortable our homes are and how much they can be improved, because we lived here for nearly 20 years before we actually undertook this retrofit and restoration. And the difference before and after, while there is a very significant difference in our energy costs, just in terms of comfort, it really can't be underestimated. And Jenny's point about the analysis paralysis is very valid. There's lots of actual, Renew and Sanctuary of excellent resources, Your Home, the energy efficiency assessors. There's lots of really good, trustworthy resources out there to actually get started on this.
Fantastic. Look, well, we're right on time. It's 3:55. It's been a great session. I could easily talk to you all for another hour. Thank you so much, everybody. And to everybody listening in, I hope you're having a great day and you enjoy the next two sessions as well.